religious thing that is jesting with the believers. But Allah says Allah too is throwing back their mockery on them. So they sit in those gatherings and they make mockery of the believers. For example, they make mockery of the halal practices of Islam, the punishment system in Islam, laws of marriage and divorce in Islam. Allah says Allah too is throwing back their mockery on them and leaving them to increase in their deviations. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim wa yamudduhum fi tughyanihim ya'mahun. And Allah is mocking them and leaving them to increase in their trespasses or deviations, so they wander in their blind insolence. If the true believers find out about these so-called Muslims, actually the hypocrites, making fun of Islam, then they say, how come? I thought you are Muslims. How come you are making fun of Islam? When they confront them, then they say, oh, we are talking only idly and joking. First they said this to the believers about the evil corrupt associates, and now they are saying to the believers about their evil corrupt associates. Allah says that in the Quran, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ قُلْ بِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. Allah says, if you ask them, then they reply, then they say, oh, we have been talking only idly and joking. Allah says, قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. Say, is it at Allah and His ayat and His messenger that you have been joking? لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا. Make no excuses. قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. You have disbelieved after you have believed. 10 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they don't want their real face to be exposed, because that would totally alienate them from mainstream Muslim community, where they enjoy a large number of benefits: power, position, security, leadership, fame, money. The hypocrites maintain very good relationships with the Muslims, with the believers, when they are in the gatherings of the believers. But when they are in their own safe houses, they make plots and conspiracies against the believers. They think this double-faced policy is a very clever and smart strategy which will allow them to enable to gain benefits from both parties, the believers as well as their deviant, evil, corrupt associates. 11 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they always suffer from indecisive minds regarding the relative advantages of joining the camps of the believers or the camps of the disbelievers. So they make one step forward and one step backward, neither firmly belonging to this group nor to that. مُذَبْذَبِينَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ لَا إِلَهَ هَؤُلَاءِ وَلَا إِلَهَ هَؤُلَاءِ وَمَنْ يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ سَبِيلًا. Allah says they are swaying between this and that, neither belonging to this nor to that. He whom Allah sends astray, you cannot find for him a way to the truth. So the hypocrites are standing between two groups of people, the believers and their evil, deviant, corrupt associates. If always watching to see which group is more powerful and advantageous. If the victory goes to the believers, then they try to establish their closeness with the believers by swearing with Allah, with strongest oaths by Allah on this. But if the disbelievers or their evil, corrupt associates gain victory, then they remind their evil, corrupt associates that they are closest and most reliable allies and share similar mindset and ideologies, and they also help them secretly against the plans of the Muslims. Allah says, الَّذِينَ يَتَرَبَّصُونَ بِكُمْ فَإِنْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فَتْحٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ قَالُوا أَلَمْ نَكُنْ مَعَكُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ نَصِيبٌ قَالُوا أَلَمْ نَسْتَحْوِذْ عَلَيْكُمْ وَنَمْنَعْكُمْ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. When victory, Allah says, those who watch about you say, that were we not with you whenever you gain a victory from Allah. But when the evil, corrupt associates gain a victory or the disbelievers gain a victory, they say, oh, did we not have a hand over you, and did we not protect you from the believers? 12th characteristics of the hypocrites is that they live in the midst of the believers, but they give their evil, corrupt associates their true loyalty and friendship. Sometimes they happen to be disbelievers. Sometimes they happen to be the so-called Muslims. They are evil, corrupt associates. They think this because they think these people are more powerful and more honorable. But Allah proclaims dreadful warning to those who take the evil, corrupt associates of the disbelievers, in many cases, as friends and protectors rather than believers. Allah says, بشر المنافقين بأن لهم عذابا أليما الذين يتخذون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين أيبتغون عندهم العزة فإن العزة لله جميعا. Allah says, give news to the hypocrites that they will have a painful torment. Those who take disbelievers as friends and protectors, disbelievers meaning those who are evil and corrupt and evil associates, who do not have faith in Allah. So Bashir Allah says, give news to the hypocrites, they will have a painful torment. Those who take disbelievers as friends and protectors rather than believers, do they hope to find power and honor with them? Verily, power and honor belongs entirely to Allah. 13 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they belittle. 13 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they use very silky, charming, and bewitching words about the splendor of this material life, about the finery of this material life, about the grandness of this material life, which will impress and dazzle ordinary people. And he will frequently take the name of Allah in his dazzling speech. But Allah informs the true believers that they are in fact the most hostile of adversaries, because what they enjoin people to do will corrupt people's morals and will take them far away from the way of Allah. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. Allah says that there is amongst the people there is a type of man whose speech about the life of this world may dazzle you. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. There is a type of man whose speech about the life of this world may dazzle you. وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ. And he would call Allah to witness about what is in his heart. Yet he is the most contentious, وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ, is the most contentious of enemies. He would talk about peace. He would talk about establishing justice and security in the land. He would talk about giving the good things of this life. He would talk about giving the prosperity of this life, yet he is the deadliest opponent of truth. When he gets power, he spreads corruption in the land, kills its inhabitants, and destroys the crops. And he would go to any length, any means to get his objectives achieved. And yet he would talk about peace. When he is amongst the people, he would do what the believers do. But when he leaves them, then he spreads deep vice and moral corruption. Allah says about that, وَإِذَا تَوَلَّى سَعَى فِي الْأَرْضِ لِيُفْسِدَ فِيهَا وَيُهْلِكَ الْحَرْثَ وَالنَّسْلَ. Allah says, when he turns away from you, his effort in the land is only to make mischief in it and to destroy crops and cattle. Allah further cautions the true believers that the hearts of these apparently fascinating, charming, and eloquent personalities are often highly deceptive, vicious, and poisonous. They are like propped up planks of wood, devoid of any fruit. Allah says, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ وَإِنْ يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ كأنهم خشب مسندة يحسبون كل صيحة عليهم هم العدو فاحذرهم. Allah says, when you look at them, their outwards please you, and when they speak, you listen to their speech. But Allah says, but they are like blocks of wood propped up. They think every cry is against them. They are the enemies, so beware of them. 14 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they frequently take oaths before making any statements, because they know the hearts of the believers do not feel tranquility in whatever they have to say. So they use their oaths as a way of screening themselves from any suspicion coming their way. اتخذوا أيمانهم جنة فصدوا عن سبيل الله إنهم ساء ما كانوا يعملون. Allah says they have taken their oaths as a screen for their hypocrisy. They hinder men from the path of Allah. Truly evil indeed is what they have done. 15 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they do not keep their words and promises. They betray or they break covenants and agreements. They betray people's trust. Allah says, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ عَاهَدَ اللَّهَ لَئِنْ آتَانَا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ Allah says, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ عَاهَدَ اللَّهَ لَئِنْ آتَانَا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ لَنَصَّدَّقَنَّ وَلَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ فَلَمَّا آتَاهُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ بَخِلُوا بِهِ وَتَوَلَّوْا وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ فَعَاقَبَهُمْ نِفَاقًا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ يَلْقَوْنَهُ بِمَا أَخْلَفُوا اللَّهَ مَا وَعَدُوهُ وَبِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. Allah says, amongst them are some who made covenant with Allah that if Allah gives us from His bounty, then we will certainly give in charity and be of the righteous. But when Allah does indeed give them from His bounty, they become tight-fisted and turn away. So Allah has punished them. He has punished them by putting hypocrisy in their hearts, which will last till the day they will meet Him, because they broke their covenants with Allah and because they have been lying. 16 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they are too lazy and hesitant when it comes to obeying the orders of the Most Merciful. They just want to finish prayer and other obligations very quickly and hastily, because they find sincere devotion during prayer and other obligations very burdensome, very difficult, because their actions are motivated not by the desire to earn the pleasure of Allah, but the desire to get recognition amongst the people, respect from the people. Allah says, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَهُوَ خَادِعُهُمْ وَإِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَلَى يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسَ وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Allah says that the hypocrites try to deceive Allah, but it is He who deceives them. When they stand up to pray, they stand up with only laziness, only to be seen amongst men. They hardly remember Allah at all. 17 characteristics of the hypocrites is that they always make excuses and seek exemptions whenever they are asked to make sacrifices in the cause of Allah. And Allah too abhors their obeying Him because of their filth in their hearts and their impure intentions. So Allah holds them back from obeying Him. Allah gives example of how these hypocrites refuse to go out in Allah's cause, citing various excuses. Allah says, لو كان عرضا قريبا وسفرا قاصدا لاتبعوك ولكن بعدت عليهم الشقة وسيحلفون بالله لو استطعنا لخرجنا معكم يهلكون أنفسهم والله يعلم إنهم لكاذبون. Allah says, had it been a case of easy gain and short journey, they would have followed you, that is followed Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But their distance was too great for them. They would swear by Allah, لو استطعنا لخرجنا معكم. If we only could, we would have come out with you. That is, come out with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam to go to jihad or the battlefield. But Allah was averse to their being sent forth, and Allah, so He made them lag behind. And Allah says, Allah says, they said, Allah says, يُحْلِكُونَ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They are destroying their own selves by lying, and Allah knows that they are liars. Because Allah says, وَلَوْ أَرَادُوا الْخُرُوجَ لَأَعَدُّ لَهُ عُدًّا وَلَكِنْ كَرِهَ اللَّهُ أَنْبِيَاثَهُمْ فَثَبَّتَهُمْ وَقِيلَ اقْعُدُوا مَعَ الْقَاعِدِينَ. Allah says, if they had really intended to go out with you, that is with Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would have certainly made some preparations for it. But Allah was averse to their being sent forth, so He made them lag behind, and it was said to them, sit you with those who sit at home. Allah gives further wisdom behind holding them back. وَلَوْ خَرَجُوا فِيكُمْ مَا زَادُوكُمْ إِلَّا خَبَالًا وَلَأَعُودَوْا خِلَالَكُمْ يَبْغُونَكُمُ الْفِتْنَةَ وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّاعُونَ لَهُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. Allah says, if they had gone out with you, that is these hypocrites, if they had gone out with you, they would have increased nothing but disorder, and they would have hurried in your midst, spreading corruption and sowing sedition amongst you. Amongst you are some who would have listened to them, and Allah is the all-knower over the Zalimun. 18th characteristics of the hypocrites is that they don't want to be judged by the ruling of the Quran and the Sunnah, because they know the Islamic judgment will be against them and will expose their hypocrisy, selfishness, and mischief. So, because they know, these hypocrites know that their income is not halal. I'm just giving example. Their income is not halal. The areas where they spend their wealth is not halal. Their food is not halal. The things that they watch, that is indecent movies, dance programs, the music programs is not halal. They know that they continue their, they cannot stop their unlawful relationship with people of opposite gender. So they want some other convenient rule or criteria which will validate their hypocritical and mischievous activities. That is what Allah says. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يَزُعُمُونَ أَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ يُرِيدُونَ أَن يَتَحَاكَمُوا إِلَى الطَّاغُوتِ وَقَدْ أُمِرُوا أَن يَكْفُرُوا بِهِ وَيُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَن يُضِلَّهُمْ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. Allah says to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and for that matter to all believers, do you not see that those who claim to believe in what has been sent down to you and what has been sent down before you, yet desiring to turn to shaitanic source for judgment, even though they were commanded to reject them? Verily, the desire of shaitan is to turn them far astray. They don't want, these hypocrites don't want Islamic ruling. They don't want Islamic Sharia in their lives. Allah says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَإِلَى الرَّسُولِ رَأَيْتَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يَسُدُّونَ عَنْكَ سُدُودًا. Allah says, when it is said to them, come to what Allah has sent down, that is the Quran and the Messenger, you will see the hypocrites turning away from you with a complete turn. But Allah makes it clear, no individual or group of people can ever be counted amongst the believers until they accept from the core of their hearts to be judged by the hukum of the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah says, فَلَا رَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Allah says, by your Lord, they can have no faith until they accept from the core of their hearts to be judged by the hukum of the Quran, and they make you, until they make you, that is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their judge in all the disputes that arise between them, and feel within themselves no haraj or resistance against what you have decided, and submit with full submission. 19 characteristics of the hypocrites is that whenever these hypocrites face difficult time, severe trials and calamities, or they find people are discovering their mischief and rejecting them, and when they find the true Muslims very powerful, very resolute, very steadfast, very sincere, then they return to the Muslims saying all they wanted with their efforts was good and reconciliation. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُم مُّصِيبَةٌ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ ثُمَّ جَاءُوكَ يَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ إِنْ أَرَدْنَا إِلَّا إِحْسَانًا وَتَوْفِيقًا. Allah says that how come when a calamity befalls you, how come when a calamity befalls them, then they come back to you swearing by Allah, we desire nothing. Let me translate this again. How then when the catastrophe strikes them because of what their own hands have sent forth, they come back to you swearing by Allah, we desire nothing but good and reconciliation. وَيَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُمْ لَمِنْكُمْ وَمَا هُمْ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ يَفْرَقُونَ. They swear by Allah that they are from you, that the true people, pious people, but they are not from you, but they are the people who are now scared. 10 characteristics of the hypocrites is that, not 10, it is the 20th characteristics of the hypocrites is that they, whenever they see true believers facing easy time, Allah's aid and victory, they become depressed because they hate the true believers from their hearts. But when true believers face difficult times, then they turn jubilant and exultant. But they do not know Allah is only purifying the true believers and raising their honor and status in His sight and in paradise through these difficult trials and calamities. I'll just bring one example. I'm digressing a little bit. The hypocrites used to laugh at the believers. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had any difficulty, faced difficulties, either in battlefield or sometime just difficulties and afflictions, they would laugh at him. See, they didn't listen to us. Look, now they're being killed. لو كان لنا من الأمر شيء ما قتلنا هاهنا. That is, if we had anything to do with their affairs, none of us would have been killed there. But Allah says, لو كنتم في بيوتكم لبرز الذين كتب عليهم القتل إلى مضاجعهم. Allah says, tell them, even if they had stayed in their homes, those for whom death was decreed would have rushed to their places of death. So now coming back to the point, the hypocrites make mockery and fun of the believers when the believers experience affliction and difficult times. But Allah assures them. First Allah says, إِن تُصِبْكَ حَسَنَةٌ تَسُؤْهُمْ وَإِن تُصِبْكَ مُصِيبَةٌ يَقُولُوا قَدْ أَخَذْنَا أَمْرَنَا مِنْ قَبْلُ وَيَتَوَلَّوْا وَهُمْ فَرِحُونَ. Allah says, when good befalls you, it grieves them. But when calamity befalls you, then they say, we took our precautions beforehand. And they turn away rejoicing. Allah says, tell these hypocrites. Allah says, say, قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا هُوَ مَوْلَانَا وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah says, tell them that no misfortune shall ever befall us, that is the believers, true believers, except what Allah has already ordained for us. He is our Mawla, He is our friend, protector. He is our Mawla, and on Allah let all the believers put their trust. 21st characteristics of the hypocrites is they don't have the courage to challenge the book of Allah or reject the book of Allah openly, because that would totally alienate them. People will know that these are not Muslims. So they take the cover of alternative laws and systems that would not only validate their hypocritical and mischievous activities, but also flout the very fundamental Islamic values, but they do it very secretive manner, using nice sounding, noble sounding rhetorics, human rights, freedom, empowerment of women, democracy, market reforms. Indeed, very nice and noble rhetorics indeed. But that is whose ultimate aim is to open up the gates of man's own desires. But the weak and confused Muslims cannot comprehend that. They unwittingly accept the argument of the hypocrites, siding with them, leaving behind their true Muslim brothers. And that is why Allah warns these weak and confused Muslims in the following terms. فَمَا لَكُمْ فِي الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِيَتَيْنِ وَاللَّهُ أَرْكَسَهُمْ بِمَا كَسَبُوا أَتُرِيدُونَ أَنْ تَهْدُوا مَنْ أَضَلَّ اللَّهُ. Allah says, what has happened to you that you are divided into two parties with regard to the hypocrites? Allah has caused them to disbelieve because of what they have earned. Do you wish to guide whom Allah has caused to go astray? 22nd characteristics, and this is the last for today. The Quran is filled with verses on the manifestations of hypocrisy, but today for my lecture, this is the last one. In this world, hypocrites live in the midst of the believers, in the company of the believers, superficially praying with them, fasting with them, reciting Quran with them, and doing all other rituals, while at the same time deceiving the true believers with regard to their true loyalty. In other words, they are mischievous or indecent people. And deceiving the true believers with regard to their true loyalty and following their own lusts and desires by rejecting the light, the nur of al-Islam. On the day of judgment, these hypocrites will once again be found in the company of the believers, because in this world they were known as believers. So on the day of judgment they will be again in the company of the believers, in the midst of the believers, trying this time trying to cross the bridge over the hell, the Sirat, along with the believers. But they will soon find themselves being deceived and duped, as Allah would deprive them of any new real light, real nur, to help them cross the bridge over the hell. As they reach the middle of the bridge, their superficial light, superficial light will be extinguished by their past deeds of hypocrisy, and they will come to utter halt, not knowing how to proceed in total darkness. So they will scream out to their believing companions, who will be far, far ahead with their lights, nur, running forward before them and by their right hands. Unzuruna naktabis min nurikum, wait for us, let us get some light from you. Qila irji'u warakum faltamisu nura. It will be said to them, go back to your rear and then seek a light. That is, go back to where the light was first given. فَضُرِبَ بَيْنَهُمْ بِسُورٍ لَهُ بَابٌ بَاطِنُهُ فِيهِ الرَّحْمَةُ وَظَاهِرُهُ مِنْ قِبَلِهِ الْعَذَابُ. Then a wall will be put between them, that is between the believers and the hypocrites, with a wall will be put between them with a gate therein. Inside it will be mercy, and outside will be torment. That the believer's side will be mercy, and the hypocrite's side will be torment. Being extremely tormented, persecuted, no longer able to reach even the believers on the Sirat. They will be panicking, panic-stricken, and distressed, and they will cry out, "Alam nakum ma'akum, were we not with you?" They will remind the true believers, but we were with you. That is, they will remind the believers they always accompanied them in this world. They helped them. For example, they might say, "But we prayed with you, we fasted with you, we recited Quran with you. How come we are now separated from you?" Then the believers will reply, قَالُوا بَلَى وَلَكِنَّكُمْ فَتَنْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَتَرَبَّصْتُمْ وَارْتَبْتُمْ وَغَرَّتْكُمُ الْأَمَانِيُّ حَتَّى جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ وَغَرَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورُ فَالْيَوْمَ لَا يُؤْخَذُ مِنْكُمْ فِدْيَةٌ وَلَا مِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مَأْوَاكُمُ النَّارُ هِيَ مَوْلَاكُمْ وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ.